How many of you guys have ever taken like a personality test or an intelligence test or somewhere you have to fill out the bubble? I mean, if you've taken one of those? Yeah. I got a chance to take one for 7 hours. My company sent me to a testing facility called Psychological Associates in St. Louis. Some of you may have heard of Psychological Associates. They were not able to help me at all. But they did put me through 7 hours of bubbling in answers to questions like, if you were given the option of staying home and reading a book or going out and going to a party, which would you choose? You have to answer that question. So I want you to think about that answer. That was extremely frustrating for me because I wanted to know which book and who's going to get the party. Because if you all are at the party, then the book has to be really good to compete with that. But I've been to some parties where War and Peace is calling my name. But when I took this test, the purpose was to figure out, okay, where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? And the company used it in leadership development to say, you know, how do we use Kevin the best? And it created the opportunity for what I believe is the funniest thing that I've ever said. Now, something you need to know about my humor. It's for me. I mean, it's fine if it brings joy and a chuckle to you, that's just gravy. Because as long as my humor makes me laugh, that's really all it's about. And no event in my life comes close to comparing to the funniest thing that I've ever said and how my humor is just for me. So, I took a 7-hour test, and we went through, and the way that Psych Associates does it, because the company pays thousands of dollars for me to spend 7 hours filling out Scantrons, and then a psychologist comes over to the company and sits down with me and goes through the results. And she was very professional in going through the results, and she got to a place and she showed me a chart, and she said, this chart indicates that you are very self-aware. This chart, this spot right here on the chart, indicates that you are very self-aware. And I said, that's funny because I never thought I was. Since then, I have like written stories in my mind about somebody who's super self-aware and just doesn't know it. I think that's great. But the psychologist, who was very professional, went, well, yes, actually the chart does. She stopped. She looked at me and went, oh. A joke. Funniest thing I've ever said. The second thing you need to know about me is I am undeterred. I am not easily put off. And so, later in the results meeting when she said, this indicates that you're very curious, I could not say, I wonder why that is. I didn't manage to get a smile out of this woman. She is in the perfect job. I wish her all the best. But this task, this 7 hours of filling out Scantrons, almost went very badly for me. Because about 2 hours into it, we were starting the next section. There were a dozen sections. I mean, it's grueling. It is awful. And so we're 2 hours in, we're starting the next section, and the guy who is administering the test and proctoring it to make sure I don't cheat on my psychology test, I don't know how you do that, but he said, you know, this test, fill out the first section, which is kind of a practice section, to orient you to the way that this instrument is expecting responses. And so I filled that out very confidently. I knew that I had gotten all of the answers right on the practice section. And he came in and he said, hey, I just want to tell you one thing. A lot of people misalign where the answer section is with where the question section is. and end up answering one off. And I remember thinking, well, that's stupid, people. And then I looked at my answers on the practice section and had misaligned by one row my answers to the questions. And by just that much, I had almost all of the different answers to this test. Or maybe I did, because the results turned out pretty good, and so it's possible that I was just one off all the way through, and it worked out. How many of you were in church on August 12th when I spoke in the service? Were you there? Okay, so I spoke about something. What was kind of the phrase that I repeated over and over? This is a test. It's a pop quiz. Ben, that's excellent. I wish I had a bag of candy to give you.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, okay. God is preparing us for the things He's prepared for us. And I love that talk. I mostly love that talk because it represented what God was doing in my life at the time. And I was frustrated with that talk because it begged some questions. I mean, yes, God is preparing us for the things that He's prepared for us, but it begs some questions. It introduces some obvious questions, and then it failed to answer them. Because Adam and the rest of the team restricted that time to, 40 minutes. And I could have gone another 2 hours. Guess what? I get to go another 2 hours. And so I want to pick up with that idea that God prepares us for what He's prepared for us. And this morning I want to answer, or attempt to answer, how does He do that? How does He do that? And the way that I want to explore how God prepares us for what He's prepared for us is to look at the biblical character, one of the great leaders in all of Scripture, Joseph. Right? So you guys know the story of Joseph, Old Testament Joseph, not New Testament Joseph, both good guys. We get this much about New Testament Joseph. We get chapter after chapter after chapter of Old Testament Joseph. It's one of the greatest leadership studies, I think, in the Bible. And so, rather than read that, because you guys mostly have all been in church, is I want to, now this is the text, because our new pastor, Adam, is so stinking technologically amazing. Isn't he great?
He's young.
That I talked to, he's young. I was young once. It's okay.
It's not our generation.
What is this, our generation? You are so much older than me. He said confidently before trying the new technology. We will see. What I want is, I want you to think. I want you to actually get an answer in your mind about 2 or 3 of the key, most important elements in Joseph's life. Okay, so we're going to make a list. We're going to use new technology to make a list. And I want you to get an idea of 2 or 3 key elements in Joseph's life. Okay? And we'll build this list, and then we'll use this list as a stepping off point to look at how God develops us. Okay? So, wait. This is called pre-collection, private collection before public collection. So, get those ideas in your mind. That's the private collection part. It's interesting. If I just said, give me one, somebody would say one, and then everybody else's mind would go to that one, and you'd stop thinking. So I'm giving you a chance. Think of 2 or 3. I'm seeing some nods. Okay, who's got one? What is a key element in Joseph's life? Wait, watch this. We're going to go. I was told that white looks the best here. That's going to happen. We're just going to pretend it doesn't. Okay, so who's got it? What is some key element in Joseph's life? What are the big pieces? Yeah, Becky.
Natural born leader.
He was a natural born leader. So, what about his life tells you that he was a natural born leader?
The visions or the dreams that
The dreams. Yeah, the dreams, excellent. And that's what I'm looking, I'm actually looking for something like that. That is, hey, this happened in Joseph's life, and that was the dreams. Okay, that button is the erase. I also can't write legibly. So we're just going to pretend that we know that that says dreams. Okay, somebody else. Good, yeah, Jail.
Jail.
Jail. Okay, this is the erase. See, I get excited and then you can't read it. That is, by the way, the definition of smattering. Yeah, Peter.
Favored by his father.
Yeah, favored by his father. Somebody else. This has got to go a little faster because we got to get done to the Olympics. Humble? What? So what makes you think that he was humble? Just like I asked Becky, what in his life, what happened that you go, oh, he's a humble guy, huh?
We've never seen him get frustrated, even after being, hey, being betrayed, he never spoke to anyone. There's no negativity in his life.
Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, yeah, in the back.
Foreign country.
He was from a foreign country. Why is that important? Like, I don't. Jesus. Okay. Somebody else. Oh, now you're looking it up.
He was sold by his brothers.
I'm still working on well building.
You're so fast.
Kathy, what gave you the idea?
Integrity. Potiphar's wife.
Oh, yeah. The really cool thing for the teenagers that have watched me try to write on a whiteboard and know that I can't blame the tech for this is that most of you haven't watched me, and so I can blame the tech for this.
Integrity of Potiphar.
Yeah.
But overconfident at a young age.
Ooh, I like that. Why do you think that, Tom?
Because these dreams and the different things that were going on in his life, he thought he was going to be a ruler of his family. And then God broke him down with the pit in the jail. Interesting back out.
Yeah. Interesting. He did have some maturing to go through, didn't he? Yeah. What else? Yeah, a couple more.
Interpreting dreams.
Interpreting dreams. Yeah, okay.
Your son has
Which one?
the little.
The right answer is left hand. Which Lucas was the right hand, sorry. He what? He was kind to interpret. I'm going to get to that. That's my son. And he showed compassion, right? Didn't he? When they came, when they needed, there's two S's. What? They've always said that I was one vowel short of handsome. So, what else? Yes. Yeah. I'm on your side. Yeah. What?
Perseverance.
Perseverance? What makes you say that, Noah? I don't understand.
Because through all the things he's been through, he persevered through, even though he didn't understand why he was in jail, why he had to go through all these certain things, from being taken away from his home, to being in foreign land, being in prison, and then the next fire and so forth.
And Derek?
Being in charge of a lot of grain.
Yeah. I got room for 3 more right there. Go. Never gave up? Okay, I'm going to stick that with never gave. That's good. God. Oh, I got to fix that. Sorry. G. Good.
Say faithful.
In the back, yeah. Oh, wait, you're pointing. So you're a helper. So you don't have an idea, but you see somebody who's got an idea. And Jane, who are you pointing at? Karis. Hi, Karis. Second in command? Excellent. I'm going to use a big word here. So he knew how to be not just the top guy, but the subordinate. Okay. And, okay, I gave you one, so I'm going to go over there, okay? We're so good. Only got an hour. Okay. Yeah. Wait.
He's lost access to his phone to be brought back to the phone.
Yeah, he wanted to be returned to the promised land. Yeah.
Say faithful, trustworthy.
Faithful and trustworthy.
And by the way, you make me feel better with the English language. I'm still learning Bible.
Yeah. I've been at it for 54 years. It's a process. Point here, so. Yeah, come on. It's there. Okay, let's close it. And Wade said, I'm just going to say, Bones, you guys know that his desire was to have those, to return back to the promised land. Kevin, are you going to be okay if we don't do yours? Or you want to do, I mean, you just got to, okay.
Live without family for years.
Live without, yeah. Oh, you know what? Let's just call that a nice little play. So, part of the process that I've been going through as I step into a role as the responsible guy for leadership development is that God's been working on me and helping me to see an answer to that question: how does God develop us? And as you look at this list, you can kind of look at it and say, you know, there was development going on in Joseph's life through all of these things. Now, some of them are the result of development, some of them are the process of development, and I had never heard anybody really talk about, in summary, how do these things fit together. And then I came across this guy. A guy named J. Robert Clinton, actually is a professor emeritus now at Fuller Theological Seminary. And I love theories. I love theories. And preparing for this talk, I put together a slide that would have taken about 15 minutes of the talk to explain to you the proper scientific way to develop a theory. And I'm not going to use it. I am very willing to carve out some time this afternoon for those of you that would like to spend 15 or 30 or 45 or an hour talking about the proper way to develop theories, because it's just so much fun. Derek, we'll just see if anybody else joins us. But J. Robert Clinton did it the right way. So let me tell you what he developed and what he found, and then we're going to explore a piece of that and try to answer that question: how does God go about preparing us for what he's prepared for us? Okay? So Clinton did this. He profiled more than 5,000 leaders' journeys. Joseph was one of them, but there were 4,099 and changed more. And these are biblical leaders, these are historical leaders, and these are contemporary leaders. And he did it a number of ways. First, he started to research himself, and he looked at the journeys of biblical leaders. And then he started digging into and reading biographies of other leaders. And then, because he was a professor at Fuller Theological Seminary, and he had class after class of graduate students who were studying Christian leadership, he would have them do both their own leadership journey and then do the leadership journey of somebody, a contemporary leader that had influenced them. And by doing that for decades, he built up this pool of thousands and thousands of leadership journeys where people self-reported or others wrote about what the most important developmental times in their life were. Okay? And what he found was that he could describe repeated patterns of growth and development that occurred in the lives of a majority of the leaders that he studied. So, in my discussion of how to develop a theory, the first thing is you get a data set. You get a group of items that you're looking at, and you say, okay, what do we see in there? You just kind of dive in. You just kind of wade into the data, and you say, okay, what's interesting, what's not? Do I see some connections? And then you move to classification. You take that entire data set and you try to classify it into blocks and say, okay, can we design or describe some categories that fit in? And then you look at what predictions you can make about the behavior of another data element based on its association with those categories. And if you've got the categories right, and then you've got the prediction mechanism right, then you can run tests. And you can say, okay, I predict that if we study the next leader's life, then we will see this same pattern of development. And what he found, looking only at Christian leaders, right? Biblical and Christian leaders, because I guess Joseph was a pre-Christian leader, but we look at the development and the patterns, and what he found was that he identified 50 different distinct developmental processes. And he used the term processes, and I love this. I'm just going to do an aside here because I grew up professionally. Part of what I did was run operations for a chemical company. And so I think in processes. Okay, you got this chemical, and you do a process, and then you got a different chemical, and you do a process, and then you got a pure chemical. And so that process, that operations, when Clinton uses the word processes, it resonates with me. But I've never thought about God processing me. Bringing things into my life or bringing my life into situations in order to process them. But that's exactly what Clinton found. When he looked at biblical leaders, when he looked at historical leaders, when he looked at contemporary leaders, he found that God brought them into experiences that later on were important processes to develop them into what God had prepared for them. Which is a cool idea. And what I want to do for the remainder of our time is look at 5 of those 50 that Clinton identified. Now, we could go through all 50, but we've got Olympics to get to. And so what I want to do is just go through 5 of those 50. The first process that he identified was something he called the crisis, a crisis process. And in Joseph's life, there were lots of crises. One is kind of represented here by this painting by a guy named Gustav Metz. And this painting we had some fun with last night because I had it up on the screen and a few people came in. I said, okay, guess what this is? You know what this is now because you've got the context. The context helps us understand things. That is the death of Rachel. So Joseph's mom, Rachel, was giving birth to his little brother Benjamin, and she died during childbirth. And you can see in the painting that Joseph is standing there. The best guess is he's between 10 and 12 years old. And his mom died. And it's a crisis. Because the guys in the background are his brothers, and you've already identified that his brothers didn't treat him very well. And that was a part of formulation, of forming, of developing Joseph. Now, I want to say a couple of things here. Because I want to be clear, because we're going to talk about these, and I think it's really interesting to see the patterns of how God develops us. But I think we need to remember that we live in a fallen world, and that people die tragically, and that terrible things happen. And I don't want you to go away and say, oh, God causes those terrible things to develop us. So it's very clear that we need to say there's a difference between experiencing terrible things and God using those in our lives to develop us and taking the next step to God killed Rachel to develop Joseph. But God, more than any of us, is aware of the fallenness and the sinfulness in this world, of the brokenness. And I believe that he's going to direct your life and my life into those situations into those experiences because there's so much worse without us. That one of the ways he uses us is to direct us into those experiences. And so, when you find yourself in that experience, I think one of the exciting things about the research that Clinton did and the parallels and the patterns that he saw in those leaders was that it's a good bet that God is not only allowing you to be human, but has development and purpose for you in the midst of that. He certainly did for Joseph. One of the things I want to do is just illustrate a few of these with personal stories. And I didn't have a personal story for crisis. And then Pam and I talked to Lauren this morning. And Lauren, as most of you know, is in China. She's working as a preschool teacher in an orphanage. And it has been terribly hard. In this orphanage of very sick little kids, they've lost 3 in the last week. And so there wasn't really a lot of talking on our phone call this morning. There was praying and there was crying. Lauren's in the midst of crisis. Knowing what I was going to teach this morning, I still didn't say, but honey, it's okay because God's developing you. Because it's a time for crying, and it's a time for prayer. It's a time for lifting her. And all the other people that are working there that are experiencing this crisis, this loss. But what I know is, Lauren won't be the same having gone through this. And you guys have pain in your life, and crisis in your life. And what I know is that God's got a purpose. And you won't be the same having going through the pain that you go through. So crisis is a way that God works in our lives. Here's what Clinton said when we talked about the crisis process thing. He always uses a deeper voice when he does. He said, events that refer to special, intense pressure situations in life. It's loss, it's pain, it's tragedy. And they can be used by God to test and teach dependence on Him. To test and teach dependence on Him. There is, in the midst of this loss in China, there's no place to turn dependence on God. All right, let's talk about the next one. Conflict. So one of the things that Clinton identified was that in almost every leader's life, there were personal and professional conflicts. And that in the biographies, in the scripture, in the contemporary lives, that it was very easy to see how God used that time of conflict, which none of them would have chosen, to develop them and to shape them. Now, I just want to run through, and you guys did a great job with Joseph's list. I want to run through a few of the shaping conflicts in Joseph's life. And you guys started your list a little bit late, okay? Because Joseph, when he was 4 or 5 years old, doesn't understand what's going on, but his parents, especially Jacob, want to dodge the coming wrath of Laban. You remember that Laban kept Jacob working for 7 years, then another 7 years, and then years after that, and was really kind of treating him unfairly. And so Jacob figured out a way to do selective breeding and end up with a big share of the herds. And then he realized that his father-in-law and his uncle, same guy, was onto him. And so he figured it was time to dodge the coming wrath. And they loaded a caravan and they moved out of town, which is the world's first Dodge Caravan. Again, it's only for me. If it makes you chuckle, that's just bonus. Okay, and so they load up and they go, and then a few days into that journey, Laban catches up with them. There's this whole scene where Joseph's mom And I'm sure he's watching, right? As Laban is going through the camp looking for their household gods that have been stolen. And Jacob says, I don't know anything about it. And Rachel is sitting up on the camel and she says, I can't get down, And so she's sitting on top of the household gods and she's hiding him and she's lying. And there's this conflict. I mean, he sees this conflict between his grandfather and his father. And then a few months into the journey, they get to a point where he's about to meet his uncle for the first time, Uncle Esau. That's an exciting family reunion. And he sees the tribe, the group, the herd from Esau coming toward them, and he sees his father split his group into two so that Esau can only kill half of them and then maybe the other half can get away. I mean, this is an experience of conflict. And it's interesting because when Jacob and the family meet Esau, they're on the journey. He sees Jacob and the family bow down to Esau. And these conflicts shape who Joseph is. Here's what Clinton says about the conflict process item. Instances in a leader's life in which God uses conflict, whether personal or ministry related. We're going to talk in a few minutes about ministry, and you all have an opportunity for ministry, and God uses ministry to develop. But in the midst of ministry is conflict. And it really isn't great when you see two people that are in the midst of conflict in a church setting to say, hey, but good news, God is developing you. But the good news is that God will use them. Next one, isolation. We know how this happened with Joseph, right? I mean, Joseph is thrown in a pit and he's isolated, then he's into slavery and he's isolated, and then Potiphar's wife gets frisky and he ends up in jail. In preparing for this, I saw something that I'd never thought about before, and that is that the fact that Joseph ends up in jail means that Potiphar didn't believe his wife. Isn't that interesting? Because otherwise, then, what would happen? Yeah, I mean, if Potiphar believed that Joseph had done what his wife said he had done, then Joseph would have ended up dead. This was not a forgiving culture. And so the interesting thing, is that Potiphar believed him, but still had to kind of take his wife's side. And for about a year, right, what do we know about his time in prison? Well, it was more than 2 years, because you know that when he interpreted the dreams for the baker and the cupbearer, that it was 2 years after that they blew him off for 2 years after they got released. Thanks, guys. And so we know that by that point, he had already established himself as a responsible trustee in the jail. And so I don't know, how long does that take? It doesn't happen in days or weeks. So it's probably 3 years that he's in jail, and he's had these visions, right? You guys properly identified that he had these visions, this idea of God's destiny for him, and now he's sitting isolated. And the interesting thing, that was a preview. The interesting thing is that isolation showed up in so many of these programs. The times of feeling alone, times of feeling removed from support. Man. 1997, 1998, 1999, the Krosley family lived in Boston. And shortly after moving to Boston, didn't plug into a church well. We tried, but this was Boston. And Boston's better now. But this was Boston in 97, and it was hard. It was hard to find a church. We ended up driving about 30 or 40 minutes to get to a church that was not terrible. We didn't make any friends. In fact, the neighborhood that we moved into, they would have block parties and not invite us. I took it personally at first. We found out that every one of the neighbors around us actually were kids living in the houses they bought from their parents. And so they've been childhood friends forever, and so they weren't really having a block party. They were just having a party with everyone except us. So, Adam, I wish that I could have given you some examples for your how to not neighbor series. Pam's mom and dad visited one time, and we went Christmas caroling. It was Christmas, and it was beautiful, and so Pam's dad, who always would suggest this, maybe even in August, hey, let's go caroling, said, let's go caroling. And so it's Christmas, and we went caroling, and we went across the street, and they were having a party, and we thought, this is perfect. And so we caroled, and the neighbors started, you could see through the window, the party's going on, they got the buffet, and everything's nice. They came over, and they pulled the shade. I know! And as the shade was coming down, I saw the menorah through the window. And I understood that maybe that wasn't the party that they wanted Christmas carols at. But still, we felt isolated. And in the midst of that isolation, we suffered a miscarriage. And we were all alone. And still alone. And I love that he identifies isolation as a way that God draws us closer to himself. We experience God in a new and deeper way. In the midst of that isolation, as we sat on that hideous green couch in that house that my wife never liked, it never got the room for him. And we held Robbie and Lauren, and we told them that the baby was gone. And it was just the four of us. There wasn't a church family that surrounded us. We got some calls from people back here in St. Louis where we were loved. That moment of isolation was a time when God met us in a new and different way. Now I'm here for the chest. It turns out in Clinton's research that there were, in almost every leadership case, a time that they could point back to and say, this is what Clinton called an integrity check. It was a time when they had to make a decision and they had to do something. They were, in fact, Clinton talks about it as a test. And so we've talked about those first three, crisis and conflict and isolation. And I think that these are things that God uses that are going to be part of our lives. But he comes alongside and he uses those to prepare us for what he's prepared for us. Does that make sense? Are you guys with me? I know it's a little bit heavy. But this one, the way that Clinton talked about it, because of the leaders that he worked with, is it felt like God set this up. That he created opportunities for these leaders as they were developing, for you and I as we're developing. I'm sorry, I know that I should have said you and me. He created it for you and me. And I know that there are 8 people out there that it bothers. And so, because while I don't have that problem, I know some of you do. So, here's Kevin's integrity check. We're living in Austin, Texas. I'm a postdoc in chemistry. We've got a baby who's not quite 1 year old. And it's time to move to our big job in St. Louis. And so, as part of the process of moving, we have an old washer and dryer, and we know that there's some place in Texas that will buy an old washer and dryer. And so I load them in the van, and I get them to the place, and I drop them off, and the guy says, do they run? And what I should have said is, well, yeah, they run, but the washer has this kind of annoying habit of flooding the floor when it gets to the spin cycle. I don't know, you're more important, you understand washers and dryers better than I do. That doesn't seem right to me, but I just wanted you to know that before you gave me the $50 to buy my used washer and dryer. What I did say was, yeah. So the integrity checks that Clinton found in the lives of leaders included both integrity checks of success, right? Joseph, integrity check, Potiphar's wife. I showed you that beautiful Renaissance painting of the death of Rachel. I can't show you any of the paintings of the scene from Potiphar's, because, we've got some younger eyes in here. I mean, it just, huge integrity check. Major success. Leave your coat. Get out. Run away. Brilliant. What I said was, yeah. And Clinton actually found that in development, it's often a failed integrity check that God uses in getting a hold of us. I gotta tell you, that drive home from the used appliance place was torture. I've never felt conviction that that one word answer placed it in mind. It was pre-cell phone, so I waited until I got home, and I called the appliance place and I said, listen, I was just in and I just sold you a used washer and dryer, and I said that they ran, but I should have given you more information. The washer's got a problem with it, and I can come back and give you your money back, and just, I had to make it right. I had to make it right. God landed on me with both feet. Integrity checks. It's interesting, I never thought about the fact that the way that we respond to these integrity checks that come into our lives is a key part of how God is developing us. Let me give you one more. One more. Ministry tasks and assignments. Let's go back a minute. God used in every one of these leaders early ministry tasks. Let me draw you a picture, actually. So here's what he says: ministry tasks and assignments, faithfulness and obedience are developed. Ministry gifts are identified. That it's early on, but what I really like is a picture that I want to draw you. So what he found, let's just make that a nice cool line. I probably could do that with it. What he found was, if that's time, early, that button should be someplace else. Early in your developmental process. And that development can happen when you're 14, or that development can happen when you're 44, but early in the process, ministry assignments have a different role than later in the process. Okay? Early in the process, ministry assignments are mostly for you. Later in the process, later in our development, they are mostly for others. Really interesting. Now you know that. I started teaching Sunday school when I was 14 years old. And I promise you that those early junior boy Sunday school classes were mostly for my development. I am sure that none of the junior boys in any of those classes ever got any benefit out of my teaching. But God started me at 14 years old with developmental ministry tasks and ministry opportunities. God's given you ministry opportunities, ministry tasks. And what we need to recognize in our own lives and in the lives of the people that we're teaching Sunday school with, or that we're doing ministry with, is that God may be using this more for your development than for others. One of my themes for the year is that ministry is good for you. That being involved in ministry is one of the key ways that God develops us. It's one of the central issues of how God prepares us for what He's prepared for us. And as I went through Clinton's material and preparing for this and thinking about my own life, here's how Clinton summarizes this, and I just want you to catch 3 pieces of this. In fact, let's go here. So there's processing. I told you I love that word. There's time, and there's leader's response. Derek, every once in a while, I try to put something in just for you. Let me just clear some space here. So Clinton says that development is equal to the function of processes and time and response. Now I'm speaking your language, right?
There should be commas, not
No, I'm going to fix it here. Hold on. Is that better? Okay. So, yeah, the 8 people who were not bothered by the I-me mistake are now bothered by my attempt at mathematical notation. I'm an equal opportunity offender. Clinton says that this development thing looks like it's the sum over time. And it's a long time. It's a sum over our lifetimes of the processing items, the processing events, the processing situations that God brings into our lives or brings our lives into, and our response. And that's the thing. Now, I'm talking to this group as if we've all made that decision to follow Christ. And it's likely that some of us here have not yet made that decision. But God works even before that decision to bring into our lives or bring our lives into situations where He wants us to take that step. For the rest of us who have taken that step, God doesn't quit there. God's not done. He says, I've got plans for you. I've got roles for you, I've got purpose for you, and I want to prepare you for what I've prepared for you. And the way that I'm going to prepare you is through these processing items. Now, the amazing thing is when I get an insight like this, then the Bible reads incredibly different to me. So, Ephesians 2:10. We are God's masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. Now this reads totally different because I can see that God's working when I align to an appliance purchase guy, that God's working to use that to develop me. In a very painful way, I'll tell you, but He was on purpose. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance is a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. James reads differently to me when I see those troubles of many kinds as instruments in God's hands to process me in preparation for what He's prepared for me. It changes the whole perspective. One more. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort others when they are troubled same comfort God has given us. That verse, my friends, is the teaser for tomorrow. Because this morning I wanted to talk about how does God do that? How does God prepare us for what He's prepared for us? Tomorrow, I want to at least look at what's God up to? Why is He preparing us? What might this be that He has prepared for us? And what does that look like? Here's how I want to end. I don't want to end with a map of Pasadena. Tomorrow, we'll look at a map of Pasadena. It's a great place to start. Here's how I want to end. You're sitting kind of with your families, you're sitting with friends, you might be sitting with people you just met this weekend. Private collection before public collection. I want you to think of, as we've talked through, crisis, conflict, and isolation, and integrity checks, and ministry tasks. I want you to think about one of the times that God used something like that, and now looking back on it, you can say, He used that in my life to prepare me. Do you think of something like that? And now what I'd like you to do is get in groups as families or get in groups, just 5 or 6 or 8, it's okay. Not everybody has to share. But here's the other piece of this. When we say, I went through this, and God used it to prepare me for this, it's encouraging. It builds confidence, and it builds faith, and it builds trust in God when we can see how He's worked in others' lives. And so that's what I want to do. I'm going to give you, this is not get together, chat, get to know each other. This is, some of you have got an idea. Yeah, I know, when God did this, He was preparing me for that. It might have been a crisis, a conflict, isolation. It might have been an integrity check, or it might have been some ministry task. You've got one. What I want to do is take 10 minutes. I want you to get in smaller groups, and I want you to share something and give praise to God. In 10 minutes, I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to pray. We're going to be done. Your kids are having lessons on Joseph and on Joseph's life. And so we've tried to tee up for you, when the kids come back, an opportunity to say, isn't it great how God worked in Joseph's life? And to start having these conversations with the littles. Because that's our job, to give praise to God. Okay, go. I'll call you back with prayer in 10 minutes. I love that you guys tell our stories of how God has worked in your lives, how He's used hard things in preparing you. I saw some tears, I heard some laughter. I want to give you permission to continue having these conversations. Let me close this with prayer. God, we are amazed. We are amazed that the Creator of the universe would direct us, would prepare us, would develop us, would process us for your purpose. God, we want to give you glory. We want to bring praise to your name. We want to recognize and share how you've worked and how you're working. God, for those of us that are in the midst of crisis or conflict, feel isolated, I pray that you would be especially close, that your peace would be easily recognized, your presence would be there. And I pray that you would be able to do the work in us that you are trying to do, that over time, through your process, that our response would be in the direction you would have. Bless us this day. Give us a great time with our kids. Give us a great time in our Olympics.